Our guest for the evening is Dr. Amber Heck. She is an associate professor with the School of Medicine. She is also a Somm friend that likes to cook, and she is also our Somm beer connoisseur. So she'll get into that a little bit later. We kind of chose January with everybody into resolutions and creating new habits. It's nice to, a lot of us want to cook healthier, and we also want to maybe prepare meals more frequently at home. And for years, Amber has been preparing frozen crock pot meals. She has perfected this for her family. And so they're easy, they're healthy, and quick to get on the table. So she's brought a couple of her favorites this evening, and she's going to share those with us. She also will share some Heck hacks, which are just some tips of the trade that she's learned over the years that will help to make these easy meals even easier. She is going to close out her segment with some beer pairings to go along with the meals that she's brought this evening. So if you've ever wondered the difference between an IPA and a Pilsner or I don't even know all the differences, but shoot questions in because she can answer those and tell us the differences. And for those of you that may not be aware, today is National Chocolate Cake Day. So I am going to take the last 3 minutes to share with you guys a microwavable chocolate mug cake. These were trending hot and heavy on social media back in the summer, and that kind of intrigued me. So I sampled a few, and they are so simple. The one I've kind of landed on and really like is the one by the Pioneer Woman. So I think the link will be available in chat if you're interested at all. The nice thing is that you prepare everything in a mug, and the cleanup is minimal. And it's not a sheet cake that hangs out in your kitchen calling your name at 3 o'clock, maybe after lunch, maybe after dinner, maybe a midnight treat. So it's one and done, easy cleanup, easier on the waistline, and I think you guys will really appreciate seeing how these are made. So with that, let's turn this over to Dr. Heck and allow her to show us some of her crockpot magic.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Hi, friends. So as Amy had mentioned, I love to make freezer meals. I've been making freezer meals for more than 5 years, but I think when I really started doing it regularly, it was about 5 years ago when I was pregnant with my son and preparing for maternity leave, and this was just a great opportunity for when I was on maternity leave to have these meals ready to go, ready to dump in the crock pot, and to not have to cook all day. So I'm going to show you today just two. We shared the recipes, so of course you can cook along with us or have them on your own time. The two that I'm showing you today are chilies. It's January, it's cooler outside. Chili is great in cold weather. One of them is a more healthy option. We'll talk about the beef chili as well, which isn't as healthy, but you can make it healthier, as you wish and to your taste. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So what I want to do is show you how to prep one freezer meal, and then we'll go ahead and plate another. So the one we're going to prep today is the white chicken chili. I brought a freezer bag with me, and this is what we use to prep the freezer meals. And these are available at the grocery store where all the other bags are. One key step that you don't want to forget is to label your freezer bag beforehand, okay? So write the name, write the instructions. Often you need to add something when you dump it into the crock pot, so be sure and write it down, because once you get all the food in there, it's more difficult to write on it, and then once it's frozen, it's impossible to write on it. So that way you don't have to have the recipe handy when you're ready to make it. So yeah, if you would help me, let's go ahead and make this. Now, they actually sell stands for these on Amazon. So if you're really interested, I've never bought one yet, but I think it's a great idea.
You're someone who should invest.
I should, and it holds the bag up for you right like that. But yeah, we don't have a stand today, so we'll go ahead and start to put our ingredients in there. And of course, this one the base is chicken. Chicken is great for slow cooker meals and for freezer meals. It's definitely one of my go-tos. We're going to put 2 pounds of chicken in it, but of course you can modify that to your liking. If you like a thicker chili, then you can add more. If you like a more soupy chili, something with a little bit more liquid, you can add less. And then we have our main ingredients here are beans and chilies and spices. So I'm going to pour the beans in, and if you would help me, because the bowl is really full. Normally I just have the cans, and we just dump the cans right in. So we're going to pour the beans right in there. Beans freeze just fine.
And I noticed that you did not drain your beans.
Yes, that's key for me. So beans, even though people equate them with being a good substitute for protein, beans are rich in carbohydrates. So complex carbohydrates, just the same type of component that you find in starches, right? So the water in the beans is very starchy, and it helps to thicken up the chili.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So we also have green chilies, and actually normally whenever I'm making this at home, I will drain the chilies and even rinse them in a colander. Because the flavor of the chilies really permeates. It does a good job of permeating the liquid. So it just depends on your taste. If you really like chilies, you may not want to drain them. You may even want to keep the liquid, but often I will rinse them completely because, of course, I'm serving my 5-year-old son as well.
Oh, there you go.
Most 5-year-olds don't like
I made
chilies.
it this weekend, and I thought, nah, I just opened and dumped
Oh,
the
you
whole
did?
thing in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too spicy, but I understand with a 5-year-old.
Yeah. No, green chilies are not that spicy. The canned green chilies that you get at the grocery store, they're very mild. Okay, so the next step is going to be to dump in the spices. Oh, let me tell you about the spices first before I dump them in. So we have cumin. Cumin is a staple for white chili. It's found in a lot of Latin American foods. We have chili powder, of course, a staple for chili in general. Onion powder. Salt, oregano, which again we often equate with Italian food, but it's also a staple in Latin American cooking. Pepper. The pepper actually, a tip for this particular recipe, if you want to kick it up a notch, you can double the pepper. If you really like black pepper, it will be very peppery. It'll have that little, it's not as hot spicy. It's kind of like a kick though.
Kick on the back.
Yeah. So you can double the pepper. We like to do that at home. And then the secret ingredient to my chilies is the smoked paprika. I love smoked paprika. Mm-hmm. I put it in things as often as I can. It's paprika, but with that smoky flavor, and it really imparts that flavor into the food you're cooking. So we'll go ahead and dump those in very carefully. All right. And then for this recipe, that is all of the ingredients. You can see how easy that was. The remaining ingredient is actually chicken stock, which I did bring, but we're not going to put it in here. There is a reason for that. We're not going to put it in because that makes the bag larger and more difficult to freeze, and also more apt to spill it, right? So with chicken stock in general, when I'm adding it to a freezer meal recipe, I'll wait until the day of and pour it in. And there are several things that you want to consider that with, and we can talk about that too. But yeah, we're done with this one, so we'll just close it up. Usually when I close it up, I try to get as much air out as possible. So I'll take the bag and kind of fold it over and then zip it up. They have the bags with the little zipper, and I like those better, but they were out this time. And then another key to freezing these meals is to kind of lay it flat and smash it out. You can toss it around and kind of distribute the spices. If you don't, that's okay too though, because it's going to cook for a long time. But yeah, kind of try to lay it flat as possible. That saves room in your freezer, and it also helps it freeze faster. So you can lay stuff on top of it. You can lay the next freezer meal on top of it, and it's also, of course, safer when you're cooking with chicken.
So I'm going to say this because I do make some freezer meals as well. My freezer is not probably as organized as Amber's freezer. So I will say that I have this little baby jelly roll pan, and I'm a sucker for snagging these and laying them on here. And I might lay a few. And then this fits perfectly. I have side-by-side freezers, so I don't have a lot of room at the bottom. It's all kind of tight. And then I slide this in, and I might have 2 bags. and then the weight of it, let them hang out in there for 24 hours, and then the next morning I just go and pull this out, and I've got perfectly flat freezer bags, and then my organization is I can slide them on top of each other on a rack. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, great tip. I like that. Yeah, I'll have to get my cookie sheets out. Okay, so yeah, this is ready to go in the freezer. Once you put it in the freezer, you can keep it for several months. It is safe to keep them for several months. When it's time to cook it, you need to thaw. That's the first step. You can either thaw in the refrigerator overnight, and it depends on your fridge, right? Sometimes some fridges run pretty cold, so keep that in mind. You might have to troubleshoot that, but usually in a day it'll be thawed. If you don't have time to thaw in the fridge overnight, you can thaw it in cold water in the sink. It's important, though, to note that you must do it in cold water, not warm water, and that's a food safety issue because you don't want to promote bacterial growth from the raw chicken. So thaw it in cold water in the sink, change the cold water every 30 minutes, should take an hour and a half or so to thaw. But that way you can take it out in the morning if you forgot to get something for dinner and go ahead and dump it in. Yeah, so like I said, chicken is really great for freezer meals. I have lots of recipes for chicken. Bacon ranch chicken pasta is one of my family's favorites. Honey sesame chicken. Generally, when you're cooking chicken in the crock pot, it's meant to be shredded, right? And one hack that I wanted to share about that is how to easily shred the chicken, because it takes forever when you take the two forks and you shred it piece by piece. So if actually once this is done cooking, you take your tongs and take the chicken out of the crock pot, put it in a bowl with very tall sides, and then take your hand mixer and just mix it up, and it will shred the chicken for you. And that is so nice. You could do it with a stand mixer too. I've done it with a stand mixer too, but a hand mixer is good. Yeah, so that's this freezer meal.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question.
Okay.
What happens if you completely forgot the night before that you wanted to have chicken chili on Tuesday? Monday, you didn't even think about it. Tuesday morning, maybe you didn't think about it. Tuesday, come 10 o'clock, you're like, oh yeah, what am I gonna have for dinner? What would happen if I took this out and popped it into the crock pot and it was still frozen?
Well, actually, that works. That does work.
It just takes longer.
It does take longer.
Okay.
You can pop chicken right into the crock pot. Now, the shape of the frozen block of food will be a bit difficult. Yeah.
I think if we could compact it to that, it might fit in there without lifting the lid up, potentially.
But that is okay. It's okay to put raw frozen chicken directly in the crock pot. It'll take longer, but actually, if you're interested in creating freezer meals that you can dump frozen into a device, a pressure cooker is great for that. Oh. So they sell these little restaurant takeout containers, the plastic, the round containers. If you freeze your food in that, it's the perfect size for a pressure cooker. So you can actually prepare this, put it in there, and then dump it into the pressure cooker.
Do you actually have a old school pressure cooker, or do you just use one of those magic?
Yeah, the magic one,
okay.
the newer Instant Pot.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a little bit of troubleshooting that goes along with cooking in the pressure cooker when it's frozen, because you have to cook the inside of the chicken, right? But so test it a few times, and you'll see that it's actually really convenient. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So you want to talk about more recipes, or do you want to move on to the plating of the red chili?
What more recipes would you discuss?
I
mean, I have already tried both of these and I like them, so I could be up for another one.
Well, I have a lot of recipes, a whole binder full. I've been collecting them for a long time. Another chili recipe to consider is a turkey chili.
Okay.
Same concept as the beef chili. You want to brown the turkey ahead of time. Anytime you're using a ground meat, you want to brown it first because the texture just doesn't turn out right in the crock pot. It'll be very mushy. But turkey chili is great with, you can put more vegetables in a turkey chili, corn, carrots, of course the tomatoes. Turkey chili is great with black beans instead of the beans that we're using today. And we know black beans are healthy and good for cholesterol. Let's see, what else? You can also make casseroles. And I didn't share any recipes for casseroles, but casseroles are really good for freezer meals too. Instead of putting them in the crock pot, you're going to put them in the oven. But you can get foil pans and set your casserole up and then just freeze it and pull it out and either thaw it or put it frozen in the oven. Now it takes a really long time to cook from frozen, sometimes like an hour and a half. But there are lots of things you can do with that. Your favorite casserole, rice, turns out really well that way. Rice is fine to freeze, but if you're going to put it into a crock pot meal, you want to wait until towards the end to do that because it will lose its texture over that 6-hour period that you're cooking.
And what's your opinion on potatoes frozen?
Potatoes actually are fine to freeze. The one thing that you need to consider if you're going to freeze potatoes in a crock pot meal is the timing, because if potatoes sit out too long, they get brown. So you want to add your potatoes as the very last ingredient. You want to cut them and add them and then put it in the freezer because it does take time for them to freeze and they can brown while they're in the freezer.
Okay. I feel like sometimes, but it may be because the potatoes were already cooked, I feel like sometimes when I've cooked potatoes in a meal, some kind of a stew, and freeze it, when I bring it back out to reheat, the potatoes are kind of mushy.
Yeah.
But it may be that you're cutting them up raw and putting them
Yeah,
here.
that is, yeah. Or you can use frozen potatoes.
Sure.
So just buy the already cut frozen potatoes and dump them in, and then that solves the problem of browning too.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, well, clearly I need to hit you up for some more. I need to hit you up for your binder. Okay, so let's talk about how you like to get this ready to plate for dinner.
Okay, yeah. So I made the red chili in the crock pot today. This is my favorite. I love red chili. I'll eat this all week long. And the recipe that I gave you it's large. It's 2 pounds of beef. It will feed like 8 people dinner, right? Probably with leftovers. So there are a couple of substitutions you can make for this. If you want to make it vegetarian or healthier, it's already naturally gluten-free, so that's good. If you want to make it healthier, you could substitute turkey. I don't love turkey in red chili. It's just not quite the same. But beans are good. And then that brings up the issue of the beans in the chili, right? Which I think someone had brought up, but we must address living in Texas. Beans in chili, right? Because there's a huge argument out there about whether or not they belong. Personally, I love beans. So to me, beans do go in chili. I'm a lifelong Texan, and I believe deeply in this. There are also plenty of restaurants in Texas that do serve beans in their chili, right? So it's not completely unheard of. It just depends on your taste. If you were to leave the beans out of this recipe, you might want to make some changes to increase the tomatoes or the meat or add a thickener. Because it might end up being more watery. One way to thicken it, besides the immersion blender hack that I'm going to tell you all about, another way would be to make a roux out of a tomato paste, which is actually pretty easy. You just take a skillet and put flour and tomato paste together. Make sure you cook it long enough so that the flour taste is gone, but that's a good way. Of course, there's cornstarch, but I don't love to add cornstarch to things. I don't feel like it works that well to thicken, but you can do that. Always mix the cornstarch and water ahead of time before you pour it in. So what I'm going to do is take the immersion blender and blend this a couple of times, and that really gives it that restaurant-style texture. It makes the liquid a little bit thicker. It's just, like I said, more restaurant style. So you take your immersion blender, If you don't have an immersion blender, which I love this tool, and we talked about this before, Amy loves this tool as well.
I'll do an infomercial right now if you guys want it.
Yeah, go right
If you
ahead.
do not have an immersion blender, you do not know what you're missing. And I will say that I got my Costco ad in the paper or in the mail this week, and they have got a Cuisinart stick on special for $25, and it includes 2 attachments. So this is something to do the immersion, and it also has a whisk. So I have one, but I'm not gonna lie, I think I'm gonna invest in a second one. I don't think I can pass up the bargain.
I want that one too.
Well, there you go.
I wonder if you could use that to shred the chicken.
Well, you might be able to.
Probably,
You
that makes
probably
sense,
could.
yeah. Take your immersion blender and we're gonna put it in. I normally blend it 4 times, just like 4 pulses. If you don't have an immersion blender, a regular blender will work. Just take out probably about a cup, less if you want it chunkier, and put it in the blender and then return it to the pot and stir. So yeah, let me demonstrate this. So just put it in, and you always have to make sure it's below the surface of the liquid or it'll just go all over you. And then just pulse, move it, pulse, and you just do that a couple of times. And then you're all done with that. And then we'll give it a stir to make sure everything's nice and incorporated. And then I think we're going to plate some of these. So I brought a couple of toppings, classic chili toppings, and also some Fritos. Now, most of you are probably already aware of the Frito chili pie, which is like one of my favorite foods of all time, is to eat Frito chili pie. So I brought some Fritos. What I love to do is to put the Fritos in the bottom of the bowl and then pour the chili on top, but the top works too. So I'm gonna put my Fritos in first, and then just ladle it in, and then I'll serve you some as well. And there you go.
Perfect.
And then we have cheese and onions and sour cream. Cheddar cheese is what works best, but you can try different cheeses if you'd like. For the white chicken chili, I like Monterey Jack or Pepper Jack. You want to take a look?
And I'm not gonna lie, I could potentially on my little lineup have some jalapenos, some pickled jalapenos.
Yeah. Yeah, so pickled jalapenos are good. Fresh jalapenos are good. I think the fresh jalapenos would pair better with the white chicken chili. But yeah, I'm gonna put cheese and sour cream on mine. I'm not a huge fan of raw onions, but raw onions, it's a classic chili topping, so I thought I'd bring that as well. But we'll just put some cheese on there, a little sour cream, and then we're good to go.
And I don't skimp on my toppings, so I'm gonna do a little bit of all.
All right, doesn't that look delicious?
It looks incredible.
Okay, so we'll give it a taste. And you gotta get a Frito in every single bite.
Yes. It's delicious. I made it over the weekend. It was a hit at my house.
Good, glad to hear it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was mentioning earlier that we used to have chili cook-offs whenever I worked at Rocky Vista University. We have to do one here.
Well, don't talk about everybody's gonna bring the same chili. Amber's won a few of her competitions with this chili, so.
That's true. I had forgotten that I shared the recipe. So, but yes, great chili, very good in the winter, very
Tasty.
hearty. Let's see what
So
else.
let's think. Well, I'll give one more plug for the Silly Cuisinart. They're great. The Cuisinart stick is great for soups. I will say that. Roasted tomato soup, whatever it might be. It's beautiful for a soup. It's also wonderful if you like to put a little bit of coconut oil in your coffee in the morning. If you do about a half of a cup, give that a mew, mew, mew. It emulsifies the coffee and the coconut oil. Coconut oil in the coffee is a very healthy thing, very healthy habit. Top off the rest with some more. It creates a froth. Put a little more coffee on top, and you are in tall cotton. Gonna love it. So what I want to hear is a little bit about the beers. I'm a beer drinker. I'm a water beer drinker because Michelob Ultra is my favorite. But I am intrigued and don't know a lot about the different beers. You like a little more robust variety. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the beers and just how they may pair well with the white versus the meat chili.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. We brought 3 beers today. I don't know if we want to go ahead and take them out and show you. We have an IPA, we have a Pilsner, and then we have a Mexican-style lager. And these are all great beers that pair well with chili. These styles do. Of course, there's many different brands available. Besides these, Stout is a common beer that you might pair with chili. Lots of people put beer in their chili as well, and that would commonly be a stout or something that's more amber brown, like a brown ale. But I really like, personally, the light, crisp beers with my chili. I brought an IPA as well because IPAs are so popular right now. Half the beer made in Texas seems to be IPAs. And that's another thing that I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
These are all local. We have some really great breweries in DFW and throughout Texas. So let's see, Revolver is in Granbury. And then Rahr & Sons and Martin House are actually both in Fort Worth. And I think they're not too far from
Right,
here,
they're
near the
close.
hospital district, yeah. Okay, so in general, there's 2 categories of beer. You have your lagers and your ales. The difference between them is based on the type of yeast that they're made with. So our lagers, they're made with lager yeast. They ferment at a colder temperature. They sit at the bottom, whereas ale yeast, they ferment at a higher temperature. They sit at the top, but they can really taste a lot alike. Traditionally, you'd think that lagers are a little lighter, clearer in color, things like that, but they can be dark too, and particularly when you're looking at craft beer. They can come in all different colors. Let's see, so some interesting things about these beers. So a Pilsner, again, this is a lager. I don't know how much time we have, but I could tell you some history about,
Sure.
yeah.
I think we're good on time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think that these are really interesting stories where the Pilsner came from and the IPA. Pilsner was invented in the Czech Republic. At the time, and I don't recall exactly, 1700s or this is before refrigeration. They were having problems in that area with contamination, and there was a man who came from Germany to teach the Czechs. At that point in time, it was not called the Czech Republic, of course, but he came over to teach them how to make German beers, and he created a new recipe, and that recipe is the Pilsner, a brand new recipe using lighter barley than had been used before, and then using the yeast that they had used in that area. And once it was tapped, it was the clearest beer the world had ever seen. You could actually see through it, and that wasn't common at that time. So the Pilsner was born, and then that very same brewery where it was created in, they still make beer today. And it's called Pilsner Urquell, or Orgel. And you can buy it at the grocery store, and it's delicious. It's very light, crisp, and refreshing.
Can you buy it at our grocery stores or only in Prague or Czech
No,
Republic?
at ours.
Oh, good.
At ours, it's very common, yeah. So that's where the Pilsner came from. IPA, another interesting story. So the IPA was created in England, and this was in colonial times. So the problem was that they were shipping beer from England to India to British soldiers. And all British beer at that time was very dark and thick. And India, they have some very tropical climates, very hot, and dark, thick beer is not great when it's hot outside. So they wanted something with a different taste. And so this brewery in England, they created a lighter beer. In doing so, they added more hops. And it turns out that hops are also they have antimicrobial properties. So they also prevented the beer spoilage on the way to India. So there was less ruined beer. So they actually got more product there. And then this just blew up. And so they called it the India Pale Ale. There's India Pale Ales and then there's Pale Ales. And the difference is the bitterness.
Okay.
IPAs have a pretty bitter taste. And this is actually, you can usually look either on the can or on the cardboard package that it comes in. It'll say something about IBUs, International Bitterness Units. Oh. And that is a measure of how bitter a beer is. So the higher the IBU, the more bitter it is. So if you don't love that hoppy flavor, then look for the
bitter beer face.
Absolutely. Then look for the lower IBUs.
Okay. All right.
And then, of course, we have our Mexican-style lager. Another interesting story about this is that Mexican-style lagers and American-style lagers are actually based on Vienna lagers. So if you ever see a Vienna lager, it's kind of the same taste. We adopted it here. American lagers you've all encountered. Those are your classics: Coors Light, Bud Light, Michelob Ultra. Those are all American lagers, very similar. Those are more filtered than our craft beers normally are, so they're very clear. They don't have a lot of sediment, things like that. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little dry mouth. So I guess we need to pop these beers. Sorry I was talking so long. So yeah, go right ahead.
Tonight, if you had that at dinner, what would you serve with it? I mean, I realize you're recommending any of these, but what would be your go-to?
So I'm not the hugest IPA fan.
Okay.
So I normally don't.
Because of the bitterness?
Because of the bitterness. It's just, I'm not a huge fan. I love beer, so I love IPA still, but it's not my favorite. But I would say people who love IPA, this is what they want to choose.
Okay.
For me, I would go with a Pilsner.
Okay.
This is light, crisp, refreshing. And then with the chicken chili, the Mexican-style lager, you want to go with.
Okay.
Or if you can find something with lime in it.
Okay.
Lime beers pair great with chicken chili.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good information. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate the education.
Of course. Yeah.
Do we have any questions for Amber? Chilies, IPAs?
We got Chase saying, "We love these ladies."
Thank you.
Very kind.
We love y'all too.
Okay, then we will spend 3 minutes to close this out, and I will show you guys how to make a super easy microwavable chocolate mug cake.
Okay.
I'm going to steal some equipment here and do a little transfer volume. Okay, so this you will probably have all of these ingredients in your kitchen right now. So really super simple. We're going to start with our dry ingredients, and that will be 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, and then you do a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder with a pinch of salt if that interests you. I did put a pinch of salt in here with this. So I will then give, with my whisk, this just a quick little blend, nothing too elaborate. And then I'm going to move on to my wet ingredients, and that will be 3 tablespoons. I mean, all you need is one measuring tool too. 3 tablespoons. 3 tablespoons of milk. 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Now that could be vegetable oil, canola oil. I actually use avocado oil at my house, and that's a perfect one as well. It's just a neutral oil, so that's a good one. They say it's a little bit healthier. I have no idea why, but I hear that and I believe it, and so I just buy it. So I take this and give this a little whisk. This you've got to get incorporated, the dry and the wet, so that takes a second longer, but still not much time. If anyone's timing me, we're probably only at 40 seconds at this point. And then if it interests you, you can do just a splash of vanilla extract. I'll do a splash. You see some of these mug recipes with an egg, and that seems a little odd to me because you only end up putting a couple eggs in an entire sheet cake. So I did not try any of those that recommended an egg, just an FYI. They may be good, it just didn't make sense in my head, so I didn't do it. Another optional is chocolate chips, and I did 3 tablespoons of chocolate chips. So I'm gonna give that another little swirl. And this actually is a single serve, but I'll be very honest, I usually make one of these and put a scoop of ice cream on it, and then my husband and I split it, and it's the perfect amount. So I'm going to take my mug. It's all kind of together in there. I'm gonna take my mug, I'm gonna put it in the microwave. This is an 1100 watt microwave, and I'm going to set it for 1 minute on high. Depending on the wattage of your microwave, the time will vary between 1 minute and 90 seconds. You will be devastated if you overcook this because it's too dry, and then you'll be sad. So I recommend starting at 1 minute, and then maybe if it doesn't seem like it's quite, seems a little too moist, maybe adding 10-second increments just to kind of get it maybe to where you want it to be. Again, it will vary on your microwave, but if you've got 1100, 1200 watt, which is pretty standard, right at 1 minute's probably gonna be your sweet spot. We've got 20 seconds left.
We have a question.
Yes.
Sweet or semi-sweet chocolate chips?
You know what? I put in milk chocolate. I keep dark, semi-sweet, and milk chocolate at my house. I'm making this for Juan. My husband prefers a milk chocolate, so I just assumed maybe Juan would like a milk chocolate. So it's up to you. If you like a dark chocolate, use a dark chocolate. That would be great. And I've also seen a lot of recipes online that do some additional add-ins. So if you love pecans, roast up a few pecans, put those in there. If you like Nutella, if you like cookie butter from Trader Joe's, I imagine you could put a little bit of peanut butter in there. So once you kind of have this basic recipe, I think you can tweak and play around with it a little. You may have to bump up a cooking time a little bit, but I think you have some options. Oh, ding, we're ready. Okay, so now you can see the texture, and it just looks moist. It doesn't look dry, it just looks moist. Sometimes it'll poof just a little bit on top, and it just looks like a delicious, moist chocolate cupcake. But this is 1 minute on this 1100 watt microwave was plenty. So you want to let it cool for 2 or 3 minutes. I know the excitement level's pretty high and you want to dig in, but your tongue will be upset with you. So give it a little bit of, let it relax for just a little bit. And then, toppers. I mean, classic is ice cream, and so I'm going to put ice cream on ours. You could do whipped cream. You could probably even squirt some Hershey's chocolate over the top of it. So you again have some freedoms. My ice cream's a little sad because it's thawing a little bit, but that's okay. I think Juan's going to love this regardless. So let this hang out for just a second. Again, the beauty is we did all of this in a mug. I always go for a mug that's a little bit, I think they would probably say to use a 10 to 12 ounce mug for this. I always go a little bit bigger so I can actually do the whisking and the preparing in the same dish and I don't have a bunch to clean up. So I'm going to set this right here. I'm going to grab a spoon. And I'm going to ask our videographer, who is always behind the scenes, but we absolutely adore him, to make an appearance on the front of the screen and give me his opinion on the chocolate mug microwavable cake.
All right, well.
Here he is, Juan Cabrera. Okay, don't burn.
In there?
Yes.
Can we see?
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you guys this as well. When you're scooping this, my favorite way to scoop is to take the spoon and go straight down to the bottom because I feel like the bottom's like extra delicious. So if you just kind of eat off the top, you're missing a little bit. But if you go straight down and get a good scoop up from the bottom.
Oh my God,
It's
really good.
Okay, give it, what do you, yeah! One of the thumbs up. Again, you guys, this is a perfect after dinner snack. It actually makes quite a bit. So we're empty nesters at our house, and I love a sweet. I cannot stand a big plate of sweets because, again, I don't have self-control, so I try not to leave that kind of stuff at the house. But this is perfect because every once in a while you're like, I just want a little bite of something sweet. So I can make one of these in, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and it's a perfect treat after dinner for my husband and I, and super easy cleanup. So if you didn't try them over the summer when they were the hot trend on social media, do yourself a favor and give them a try now. Give one a try now. Any questions from any of this? I think there's going to be a link to the Pioneer Woman's recipe, but again, Google, read through some of the reviews. You may know some people put baking soda in there, some people put baking powder. So you can kind of sort through and maybe decide the one that looks the best to you. Well, if you guys don't have questions, I want to say thank you, Dr. Heck, for joining us today. I always want to kick off my new year with good habits. COVID has forced me into some good habits. We do not eat out as frequently as we used to. We were never huge people that ate out, but this has really brought things in tight, and we're eating a lot at home. So I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate your time. And I appreciate you guys for coming in for a visit. Hi guys, Amy Estes, Assistant Director of Community Relations Special Events and the host of Cooking with Friends. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe below.